During this first year of my retro gaming journey, I've had a big focus on Atari. For many people my age, that's where it all started. So I have a couple of 2600s, 2600 plus, a 5200, and a 7800. Plus quite a few games for each. I really wanted to finish the year with a Jaguar, but those things are crazy expensive. Now, my Atari content will not stop next year, but if this year is my year of Atari, the next year will be my year of Nintendo. And yeah, I'll be adding other consoles into the mix as I go. You already know I'm an Evercade fan, so I've got the Nexus on pre-order, and I've already pre-ordered an AES Plus. The problem I've run into is my tendency to go ahead and buy cartridges for consoles I don't own yet, especially the NES, SNES, and Genesis. Now, I know I'll own all of those consoles eventually, but in the meantime, how do I play these games or even make sure they work? Hi, I'm Paul, and this is Indie Pop Productions. Today, we're going to take a look at the Retron 5 by Hyperkin. Retron is a game company that makes accessories and controllers for retro gamers, and with their Retron line, they make clone consoles that can play old cartridges on modern displays. They have consoles that play 2600 games, NES and SNES games, Genesis games, and even TurboGrafx 16 games. The Retron 5 is not new. In fact, I think it's been around for around 12 years, so calling this a review would be a little bit of a stretch. Since the Retron 5 came out, they've really focused more on single-use consoles that do one or two things really well. But with my use case, I just couldn't pass up one console that played NES, Famicom, SNES, Super Famicom, Genesis, Game Boy, and GBA game cartridges all in one. And plus, its use of HDMI makes game capture so much easier. Now, it's not a perfect solution. It doesn't play these games natively like original hardware would. It basically dumps the ROMs and then plays them off of emulators. But today, I'm hoping to find out if this 2014 device is my best bet for my growing cartridge collection in 2026. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We are coming close on 500 subscribers. I was originally hoping to hit that mark by the end of the year, but now it looks like we could hit it by the end of the summer. Fingers crossed. When that happens, we will have a 500 subscriber celebration giveaway. More details on that coming up very soon. But in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow and make sure you can find our next video as soon as it drops. Now, let's crack this thing open and go play some games. Nice looking box, pretty standard, but well packaged. Got all the legal information on the back. Hyperkin Retron 5 shows that you can use Sega, Nintendo NES, and SNES actual controllers or compatible controllers because it actually has the right ports on there. Go ahead and get this thing opened. If I can, I may use this knife to cut a few too many things open. And I'm struggling with this a little bit. Alright, so we got a couple more pieces to cut. Alright, there we go. And first look at the console and controller, a couple controllers. This first one is the wireless. Nothing but bad reviews on that. That feels very cheap. I don't imagine I'm ever really going to use this. That is pretty awful. Looks like that takes, I think that's micro USB. And this one is more like a traditional SNES controller, SNES controller. It's got the actual port on there, so you can put it in the, I guess would probably even be compatible with an SNES console. And your cords, got HDMI. And that is, I believe that's, yeah, that's going to be for the power. No, that one was actually for that wireless controller. This one's for the power. And these are just alternate plugs if you want to use it as an adapter to plug into other countries' outlets. Interesting. Okay, now the console itself. And, this thing is ugly. Even looking at it online, it's ugly. I hate these colors. My wife looked at the box and said that's the most 90s looking thing she's ever seen. But here we go. Yeah, that fits there. Then we've got, the various consoles that you can hook it up to. We've got Genesis, SNES, NES, and Famicom. And then just, your regular instructions and whatever else they pack in along the way. So we pop in the cartridge, Famicom first, and nice snug fit. It finds and realizes what cartridge it is looking at, so it automatically knows it's Famicom. Super Mario Brothers. Interestingly, completely in English. Everything on here is exactly like I remember it from my own. Colors are vivid. Everything pops really nicely. A lot of people would choose to put on the CRT shaders and things like that. And I believe those are options. I haven't actually messed around with any of that yet, but to make it look like more traditional. But everything moves great. I am using that more traditional SNES controller, but feels great, looks great. I'm really happy with this. For a lot of people, this is going to be their only opportunity to really play Famicom games. I've got a Famicom, but that's obviously not something your average person is going to have, and this does make it a little easier to access these games. To try out NES games, I decided on Operation Wolf. This is a fun, light gun-based arcade game that was ported to pretty much everything at the time. On the NES, you can play with either the controller or the zapper. I'm playing with the controller here, as the traditional zapper only works on CRT TVs, though there are modern alternatives worth looking into. The NES version is a fixed-rail side-scrolling shooter where you shoot enemies in an attempt to rescue POWs. You also shoot supplies, which drop pretty generously to take them into your inventory. While it's only a hint of what first-person shooters would eventually become, good luck getting into Call of Duty without first standing on games like Operation Wolf. The game looks great on the Retron 5, smooth, very little noticeable lag. There's only one problem. It freezes, after about a minute and a half, every time. Plays fine on a real NES, but not here. I was trying to avoid just playing a bunch of Mario games, but since Operation Wolf kept freezing up on me, I decided to give Super Mario Bros. 3 a go. Again, looks amazing. I think there may be a little lag here, or it's possible I'm just out of practice and need to get the timing back. I don't have much else to say about Super Mario Bros. 3 beyond what I've said before. It took an already groundbreaking game and improved on it in almost every way. It's hard to believe this was even on the same console as the original. The controls do feel a little floaty. Again, I'm not sure if this is caused by the included controller, a slight case of lag, or just my currently low skill level. I'm hesitant to blame it on the controller, as Hyperkin does make very good, reasonably priced controllers. But it makes me want to try out some of my other controllers, see if they work any better. But then, freezes again. Repeatedly. On every NES game I tried. So far, Famicom plays great. NES, not so much. Moving on to the SNES, I wanted to take a look at Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. I actually had quite a few SNES games, but nothing to play them on. I was very excited for the opportunity to try some of these games out, and I was especially excited to play the Donkey Kong Country games. If you have only played last year's Donkey Kong Bonanza, my favorite game of last year by the way, you really need to check these out. The Donkey Kong Country games, or Super Donkey Kong in Japan, are side-scrolling platformers. The games can be pretty challenging, but also very fun. You can see the clear step up in graphics between generations, but more than just the graphics, it went a completely different platforming route than the Super Mario Bros. Games. The first game was great, but in Diddy's Kong Quest, DK is kicked out of the lead role to be replaced by Diddy, the sidekick from the first game. Diddy is light and quick and brings a new dimension to the series. This is likely the best platformer on the Super Nintendo, and more importantly, No freezing on the Retron 5 with any of my SNES cartridges. On the Retron 5, Super Famicom games used the same cartridge slot as Super Nintendo. The only thing that kept Super Famicom cartridges from being played on a Super Nintendo console or vice versa was a slight difference in the shape of the cartridges. The Retron 5 has a big enough cartridge slot to accommodate both shapes, so problem solved. I've played Super Mario Kart on the channel before, but never the Famicom version. Near as I can tell, the only difference is the little bit of Japanese that occasionally pops up on the screen. I guess that could be a problem if you don't already know how to play Mario Kart, but let's be real. If you're out here picking up Japanese video game cartridges, you know how to play Mario Kart. Looks great, plays great. The Super cartridge slot appears to be a win for both Super Nintendo and Super Famicom games. There's only one Sega cartridge slot on the Retron 5, and that slot naturally belongs to the Genesis, or Mega Drive. Although you can purchase an adapter from Retron to play Master System and Game Gear cartridges. The Sega Genesis might be my favorite console of all time. It was the first console I bought myself. It was the first console I ever got when it was new, and paired with the Sega CD add-on, it got me through high school and college. In fact, I played it until I got my PlayStation, and I didn't get my PlayStation when it was new. And if you're going to show off the Genesis, you can't go wrong with Sonic. And you could argue that the best Sonic cartridge on the Genesis was Sonic 2. This one gave me the feels. I can't wait to try it with an actual Genesis controller. And yes, I have one even though I don't own an actual Genesis. Looks great, plays great. So far my Retron 5 has only struggled with NES games. I have a lot of nostalgia for Tetris on the Game Boy. I couldn't tell you how many hours I spent with that brick of a handheld with the tiny puke green screen, fitting together falling shapes until I saved up enough money to buy Castlevania. And you know what? I still kept going back to Tetris. Of course, I've played countless versions of Tetris over the years, and even the Game Boy version plays in color on the Retron 5, but there's something special about this experience. I played a lot more Tetris on here than you're going to want to watch, but that tells us Game Boy emulation on my Retron 5 is a big win. For some reason, even though it uses the same cartridge slot as the Game Boy Advance games were a bigger struggle to get the Retron 5 to read. Ironic, as it's considered a GBA reader that just plays Game Boy games coincidentally. I tried US games, I tried Japanese games, I tried all games that have been tested recently on my GBA or the GBA cartridge slot on my DS Lite, my current favorite way to play GBA games. I finally got a Japanese copy of Donkey Kong vs. Mario to play after several attempts. Not honestly my favorite game, but it's the one that worked. I do really love the GBA. I've honestly owned more Nintendo handhelds than Nintendo consoles. In fact, the 3DS is the only one I've missed. I want a new 3DS XL, or LL if it's a Japanese model, very badly. It's region-free, so it doesn't really matter which. Unfortunately, 3DSs are very expensive right now. And, unfortunately, I can't get GBA games to play more than a few minutes on the Retron 5. And these don't just freeze, they straight up reboot the entire console. Like I said at the beginning of the video, not a perfect solution. And I knew that going in. Hyperkin hasn't updated this thing's firmware in years, so I'm not expecting big improvements going forward. There are community-made firmware options, so I may look into that, but at the end of the day, the hardware is what the hardware is. It's a fun toy, but Hyperkin seems to have moved on to other projects that I'm personally much more excited about. Maybe we should move on too. But if you are interested in getting one, the all-black model appears to be available on Amazon again. I like a pop of color in my consoles, but this is a bit much for me. Hyperkin is currently working on something they call the Mega 95. That is a handheld that plays Genesis and Mega Drive cartridges. They are taking that very seriously, and they seem to refuse to release it until it is completely and truly ready. That is refreshing, but I cannot wait to get my hands on one. But I'd love to hear from you. Have you played any of Hyperkin's Retron consoles? And if you got your hands on a Retron 5, what would you play first? Don't forget to like and subscribe as we make our way to 500 subscribers. And if you'd like to help financially, this is a very expensive hobby. I'm going to leave a couple links down in the description. The first link is my link to Whatnot. Whatnot is a live auction site that is where I do a very high percentage of my retro game hunting. If you follow my link and sign up, they will give you a credit of between $10 and $200 to get you started. And after your first purchase has been delivered, I'll get a matching credit. The second is my partner link to Dubby. Dubby is an energy drink that is largely aimed at gamers. It contains real coffee extract and gives you that energy boost without giving you the jitters. I'm going to have a video that talks a little more about that soon, but in the meantime, if you'd like to try them out, my link will get you 10% off your purchase. Thank you for watching, especially those who made it all the way to the end. And as always, I'll see you next time.